Welcome back to another Wisco Fanatics Tuesday night. We are live Tuesday night every single week now through the end of football season. We will be here every single Tuesday. Next week, we're going to have a preview, which is crazy to think already that we have previews coming up. So we're very looking forward to that. Tonight is our stat projection show. So let's get into it.
Welcome to another live episode of the Wisco Fanatics Show, where we discuss the Packers, Bucks, Brewers, Badgers football, and basketball from an optimistic perspective. Wisco Fanatics is brought to you by Cardboard Legacy, Wisconsin's most complete sports card shop. Buy, sell, grade, and consign all at their location in Oshkosh.
Welcome, everybody, to our Green Bay Packers stat projections episode. We were looking forward to this one for a long time since we planned it, really. This is one of my favorite episodes of the entire year of all sports. I love projecting the stats for the Packers in the upcoming season. But before we get started, I got two things to say. One, I want to congratulate my son and his team for winning their first ever middle school tackle football game. So great job, guys. You guys did awesome. Go Nina Rockets. I never thought I would say those words in my life. But as we move on from that, Bryant, is there anything you wanted to touch on with cut days being today, where the Packers named their official 53? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Just a couple. There are a couple surprises to me. I think for the way Anthony Johnson Jr. had played, I was a little surprised to see him go. But and I've kind of been a proponent of like complaining about this. Like we've given him all his special team like stars or whatever. So now we cut someone that I thought was hitting the ball, hitting hard. Well, I mean, the coaches, everyone praised him all summer, spring, and then in summer, it turns into him being cut, I feel like, just to keep someone for Rich Bisaccia. So if honestly, this is way ahead of, but if they don't perform better in special teams this year, I think we're moving on from Rich at this point. But that's, for a different time, might be a hot take. But also for the kicker, I thought for sure it was either Carlson or someone else from another team. Now, I do have a thought about this. It could be possible that they release Carlson today because maybe they want to try to get him back on the practice squad, and they're like, okay, let's jumpstart that process. And it's possible that they do go out and claim someone like Matt Wright or something like that, and then get rid of Joseph. So I think tomorrow's going to be a big day. The only other one I was a little surprised by was keeping, Mosby and Cox. That's a lot at that position, but I'm excited about the roster. I think, Dylan going on IR is unfortunate. But that probably opens a spot for someone like Mosby, because I think we're only going to roll with 3 running backs now, which is what we're at right now. But and I think we'll stay that way. But that's kind of my initial thoughts, and I think we'll see some changes tomorrow.
Yeah. So if you didn't see, I should have said this before, but Tyler was live earlier with Lombardi Time Brews, John from Lombardi Time Brews. They did a great job. I was trying to throw in as many comments as I could as I was trying to pay attention to a football game at the same time. So that was extremely hard. But my thoughts on it are this. First of all, very sad news about A.J. Dillon. That actually makes me really sad. Now, I know that a lot of Packers fans were upset with him after preseason game versus the Browns. They were upset with him all last year. But I just want to take a moment and make everybody realize that he still is a person, and he's giving his body to this city and this state and this franchise and us as fans. So when he's going through this tough time, I better not see any slander, or I'm coming for next. Like, I'm not going to hold back. The man literally took the most team-friendly deal that you could possibly take because he loved being here so much. So really feel bad for A.J. Dillon. Hope for a speedy recovery for him. Now, I get to the O-line. I really, really like the O-line group. I like that they kept a lot of depth there. I think that's one of the positions where you need to keep depth, especially when you pay a quarterback the amount of money that you pay Jordan Love, right? So you got to protect them, and you got to develop these young guys. We have to keep developing offensive linemen, so I love that. That was the first thing that I loved. Secondly, when I found out that we were keeping Brenton Cox Jr. and Mosby, I really took a step back, and I was like, God damn it. I feel so dumb because I didn't realize, and I should have thought about this. Switching from a 3-4 to a 4-3, they're really going to have to try to find guys that can excel in this defense. They're going to need more edge rushers. So I should have predicted that we were going to have more edge rushers. I really should have thought about that. Now, I don't think I could have, because I didn't think they were going to get rid of both quarterbacks and Anders Carlson. So good on them. You can never have enough pass rushers, just like an NBA. You can never have enough shooters, right? So it works out well with that. King being cut, I got to tell you, that one kind of surprised me. I thought that he was getting better as the preseason went on, in my opinion. So I thought maybe if he was showing steady improvement, they might give him a chance. But I understand. It's kind of the same boat with Anthony Johnson Jr. Now, Anthony Johnson, he absolutely loves to hit. And I think he'd be a great player on special teams since we're talking about Bisaccia and keeping players for him. But he was tough to watch in coverage. I got to be honest with you. He's got some stuff to figure out there. But if he can get on the practice squad and they can fine-tune some things, I think that would be a match made in heaven. Now, I do agree with Bryant. We have brought in the best kick returner when we got Bisaccia. And, the kicking game has been hard. We've had long snapping issues. If the special team struggles this year, Bisaccia should have a very, very hot seat. So I wasn't all the way on board with Bryant at first when he started bringing this up last year already. Bryant was ahead of the curve where a lot of people are saying this now. But I think I'm fully on this bandwagon now, Bryant.
Yeah. And I don't want it to be the case, but it's another maybe Zane Anderson is fine and he can go in there and play safety. But look, if we're down to our fifth safety, I want it to be Anthony Johnson Jr. because maybe he misses in coverage, but maybe he hits that guy so dang hard he fumbles. We've already seen he forced a fumble this spring. You know what I mean? So he's at least going to make people think about it. He smacked a running back on one of the plays too, and he came through the line, just absolutely destroyed them. And he's not afraid to stick his head in there. So at very minimum, I hope he's back on the practice squad and he becomes like one of those game day call ups or something like that. So I don't think I think it's too early maybe to give up on him. You're right. His coverage wasn't great, but I think there can be a role for him on this team. So
Samuel said he loves his aggression.
For me, I'll include this too. For me, and I know Zane Anderson's on every special teams thing, but someone like Christian Welch, who showed a lot this preseason, who also was making tackles on special teams, like maybe that's someone that could have brought more value to the team. But I don't know. We'll see.
I expect a lot of these guys to be back on the practice squad. Yeah. King, Johnson, Welch, all of them.
That one surprised me too. I thought it would be Robert Rochelle or King before Valentine.
Nope.
But Valentine did show a lot in the playoffs last year.
Yep. Valentine's second half was really good.
Yeah, and he has kick return experience, so that's another special teams kind of aspect there too. So
yeah, Zach, also thank you. And yes, I think Welch will be back to the practice squad, and it wouldn't shock me at all if he's elevated for week 1.
It wouldn't shock me if he got claimed after the way he played this preseason.
Honestly, if you think about it, a lot of these teams probably have linebackers fixes
on the team,
that they like, that they're familiar with. So I mean, it's possible, but I mean, somebody has to claim him and immediately put him on their 53. So again, it's possible. I don't know how likely it is.
Yeah, that's right.
And yes, Zach Dubois will be back too. Nobody's falling over themselves to run to claim a 7th round second-year wide receiver.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. You guys ready?
Let's do it.
So we're starting from the top. So Jordan Love is going to be the first one on here. So this is – here we go. Jordan Love stats. Here we go. This is consensus between Jake, Bryant, myself, and Simon. These are our numbers, all consensus out between the 4 of us. Averaged out, we have Jordan Love going 401 for 589 for a 68.1% completion percentage. You guys, we were off by 0.9%. We couldn't get it there.
I was at 69.
68 is pretty high. That's a high number.
Yeah.
Well, I will tell you this. When I looked at it, let me finish reading it off, and then we're going to have a couple discussions on this. We have Jordan Love going for 40 touchdowns and 9 interceptions, 43 rush attempts for 260 yards, and 4 more rushing touchdowns. Now, Zach brought up the new QB2, which is Malik Willis. I'm very excited to see him in action, unfortunately. I hope it's not until next year's preseason. Or when we're blowing the Bears out in the final week of the season and he gets to play the whole fourth quarter.
Yeah, right.
So, looking at Jordan Love. Now, looking at last year's quarterback numbers, I think right around 580, 586 or something like that was the leading passer in the NFL. I firmly believe that it's very possible that Jordan Love leads the NFL in passing attempts this year. Now, we touched on this a little bit last week, and my reasoning for this thought process is if you are looking at the 5 best playmakers on the offense not named Jordan Love. It's Josh Jacobs and 4 wide receivers. So that's where I'm at. That's why I had Jordan Love's attempts very high, as did Jake. So Jake and I both had Love at 595, and Jake had him at 600 passing attempts. And Bryant both had him at 580. Interesting thing is here, Simon only had Love at 36 touchdowns. I had him at 43, so that's the biggest gap there is from 36 to 43. Jake and Bryant were both in between there as well. Zach said he thinks 40 is kind of high. I like the optimism, though. I mean, if we're talking about all the playmakers, we've spent all summer talking about how deep the wide receiver room is, and Josh Jacobs being a pass-catching back, and Jordan Love taking another step, and then adding in the fact that Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft were both factors in the passing game at different points last season. There's too many playmakers on this, or potential playmakers on this offense, to not imagine that Jordan Love takes the next step, and is why people are discussing him as a potential MVP candidate.
And that was the point I was going to make. If he's an MVP candidate, and we all believe he's an MVP candidate, the numbers are going to look something similar to this.
Exactly.
For him to be in that conversation.
Absolutely. And I think the yardage is something that could fluctuate by 200 or 300 yards in either direction. I could see him anywhere from 42 to 4,800 yards, all depending on the depth of targets on all of these guys. Like Zach said, the mouths to feed on the offense.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited for this. Now, the other thing on Jordan Love, Jake, you had Jordan Love rushing 36 times. Rushing 45 times for 380 yards. That's an 8.4 yards per carry average on there.
All right. You ready? You guys remember that one about the Bears and the porridge where one was too hot, one was too cold? Last year, I very much undersold his rushing ability. And I felt like an idiot when I was watching him in week 2 as he ran for like 30 yards in one play. And I was like, yep, you're an idiot. You're an idiot, guy. So I was like, we're not doing that again. We're not doing that again. But I didn't want to go too crazy. I think 45 rush attempts for 380 actually could be possible because he had some long runs. He sticks his nose in there and gets some extra yards. He can have some 15, 17-yard rushes. I mean, we talk about the playmakers, right? So what's going to be wide open? Middle of the field. They're not really going to be quarterback spying a guy like Jordan Love. So he can get some 20-yard runs. He had a big time run against the Lions, that week 4 matchup. So, I mean, maybe.
Hey, real quick, I know it's a little bit off topic. Going back to what we did about the Ross projecting, but you made a point about the quarterback runs. I don't know if you guys talked about this, but Malik Willis would be a really good addition for us to prep for Jalen Hurts and Anthony Richardson the first 2 games of the season.
That's a really good point. It's a really good point.
I thought about that, actually.
And we play the Titans in week 3.
Yeah.
Samuel said, I don't know about the attempts. We got to think about Jacobs. He's a workhorse. Well, with A.J. Dillon being out for the year, Josh Jacobs' workload just went up. And if we had more than a couple hours between that news and when we did this show, I have a feeling we'd probably adjust our numbers a little bit.
Well, my numbers are pretty high.
I know they are.
Yeah.
But that, taking some touches obviously away from A.J. Dillon, even though none of us were super high on A.J. Dillon's touches, it's just going to be more plays that the Packers have to run to other players.
Mm-hmm.
Zach said Love needs to be more comfortable scrambling and protecting the ball. That's just a growth thing.
He'll get there.
Yeah. And I thought he did pretty well protecting the ball overall for his first season. You remember he had one game where he threw like 3 interceptions. I don't think he had another game where he threw more than maybe one more where he threw 2, and the rest of the season it was just 1 at max.
Yeah. And a couple of them were just like game-ending situations where he's just chucking the ball down the field, just trying to make something happen.
You also have to think about fumbling the ball too, which I think is what Zach is kind of more alluding to when he's running the ball. But he might have had a couple fumbles too, but I don't really remember. I remember him having 1 bad fumble, but other than that, I honestly thought he was pretty good in his first year, to be completely fair.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, and I gotta say, on all of our consensus numbers, even last year, this year, I think consensus-wise, I think we're going to be pretty good.
And I think the Packers are going to have the ball a lot more often because I feel like their defense is going to be a lot better.
Yep.
Okay. Are you guys ready to move on?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Here we go. We're going into running backs now, starting with Josh Jacobs. So consensus, we have Josh Jacobs going for 258 carries for 1,158 yards. That's 4.5 per carry. I think that's totally reasonable. And 11 touchdowns. Then in the receiving game, 43 receptions on 54 targets for under 322 yards and the first 2 receiving touchdowns of his career. So here we go into this. Now, I'm just going to toot my own horn, and I should have done this with Jordan Love. Bryant, to his credit, was the closest on Jordan Love's numbers to what our consensus totaled them to be. So I wrote down everybody whose numbers were closest to what our consensus ended up being. I was closest on Josh Jacobs. So,
man, I've got to be super close to you because I'm looking at mine now and I'm only a few yards off. And I
was only 8 yards off on the yards, so I was a little bit closer, and then I was closer on the receiving stuff as well.
I definitely pumped those numbers up.
You were very, very close. We had pretty similar numbers, but we're gonna go to Jake first here. Pretty much, Jake is the only person I need to talk to.
Say it.
Zach, we're gonna get to Marshawn Lloyd. We didn't do Emmanuel Wilson because we weren't 100% sure he was gonna make the roster, but we have Marshawn Lloyd. But Jake, you have Josh Jacobs for 270 carries and 16 touchdowns, bud.
Oh, yeah.
You were single-handedly bringing this average up into the double digits. I had him at 9, Simon at 8, Bryant at 9. You have him at 16.
Hey, guys, do you guys really hate when we get to the 1 yard line and we couldn't punch it in or we had to try to throw the ball? We have a guy we can hand it off to, and he's going to get that 1 yard now. You guys remember when Jamal Williams had a bunch of rushing touchdowns from 1 yard away?
Touché.
I think it's very possible that Josh Jacobs and Tyler, we were leading up to this episode, and you kept alluding to it, talking about how we think we're going to be a one-man show in the backfield. Dude, I literally couldn't have agreed with you more every time you said that because I was like, dude, we got a rookie and a guy that I don't even know if LaFleur trusts at this point. So we're going to be handing it off to number 8. We're not giving him this money for free. He's going to earn it. So that's what I took into consideration.
So I can tell you, we had Jacobs' consensus at 258 carries. We had AJ Dillon at 86.
Yep. Oh, I was way over on that. Holy crap.
You were. Bryant had him down at 64. You had him at 105. Simon at 85, and I had him at 90.
Wow.
So we were pretty low on AJ Dillon's carries. I think that reflects what we think that Josh Jacobs is going to do in the running back room.
Yeah.
Zach asked the question, could Watson and Reed have some carries in the jet sweep game? Yes, 1,000%. It will happen.
I almost wanted to predict Reed's rushing stats.
I know. Wicks will have some
in your notes that he's going to have 3 rushing touchdowns, and I'm like, I don't have a column for that, bud.
No, I'm sorry. I think he is going to get that, though.
I don't know about 3 rushing touchdowns, but we'll see.
You might.
You got the Packers.
Jake hasn't scored like 75 touchdowns this year.
We really have the potential to be the best offense in the league, in my opinion.
I think the potential is there. I strongly agree. Okay. Let's go to next. We have Marshawn Lloyd. So this is where we have Marshawn Lloyd. Now, again, knowing the injury to Dillon, we probably would have adjusted these a little bit. But I got to say, good job, boys. I had him at 45, Simon at 46, Bryant at 44, and Jake at 45 carries.
Wow.
So insane. We have Marshawn Lloyd consensus 45 carries for 212 yards, 4.7 a carry, 2 touchdowns, and then 13 receptions on 17 targets for 104 yards and a receiving touchdown. Zach, hold your horses. We're going to get to wide receivers. This is going to be really fun. I'm really looking forward to the wide receivers. But we're on Marshawn Lloyd right now. Now, not a super big, outlier stat in here anywhere, except for Jake, maybe in the receiving game. So Jake, you had 6 receptions on 10 targets for 70 yards. Just not thinking Marshawn Lloyd's going to be big in the receiving game, or
not. I mean, I don't think he's going to be there early on in the passing game. I've talked about him getting better at pass pro, being a better blocker. So I think that's the first step as a running back to you getting targets in the pass game. So once he improves on that, maybe, but I think we have our short yardage guys all figured out. We have 2 tight ends. We have to throw short yardage. Jayden Reed.
Romeo Doubs.
Wicks is always open. I mean, we have Romeo Doubs. I mean, we have so many guys that we could throw too short. I don't think we're going to have to go to Marshawn Lloyd. Plus, I gave all those targets to Josh Jacobs because I think he's he's coming for that title again.
And I think if we looked at our 3 running backs, originally we had Jacobs, Dillon, and Lloyd. I think if you looked at it, and we had this conversation in the preseason and during the roster show, that we believed that at one point Marshawn Lloyd would take over RB2 from A.J. Dillon.
Yeah.
Now he kind of is RB2. Like if you had to look at the depth chart for the Packers, it would be Josh Jacobs would be number 1 and number 2, and then Marshawn Lloyd and Emmanuel Wilson would be listed as RB3. Todd asked the question, do you guys think Green Bay checks the cut list for another veteran running back? Maybe. It depends on Marshawn Lloyd's health, I think. I think if Marshawn Lloyd is healthy, you go with the 3. And yeah, Scott, it's totally feasible that Lloyd gets more carries than that with Dillon out. But you also have to factor that Emmanuel Wilson is in the room.
Yep.
Okay. You guys ready to go to wide receivers?
Oh, I'm so excited for this.
Okay. Christian Watson. This is where we're starting off. Our consensus numbers have Christian Watson getting 53 receptions on 83 targets for 764 yards and 8 touchdowns. Now, here we go. So Justin said, yeah, I heard a guy who could help. Yeah. Justin, if you see that, report it. Yeah. Scott said he's a change of pace. He has the ability to break it, just have to cut down the fumbles. And that's an experience thing.
Is that the person impersonating us? They're trying to give away parlay picks?
Yeah, that's what they were doing. Thank you, Justin. Okay. So on Christian Watson, Jake, you only have him down for 600 receiving yards.
Yeah. Yeah, the receiving was tough, man. We have so many people to throw the ball to. I will say, I have to pat Bryant on the back because Bryant made a bold prediction last week. I think it was 5 players with 500 receiving yards. I had 5 receivers at 500 receiving yards. So you're welcome. And I had that written down before you made that projection. So same wavelength, my man. Now, the thing with Watson is we're going to rotate so many people. And I actually have him as, I believe, the 4th highest in yards because I think that he might be the 4th option on a lot of plays, and he's going to get double teamed down the field a lot. So I think shot plays maybe, but other than that, I don't know.
I think with Watson, and I have him projected this way, granted I have him 90 targets. You have him at 80, I have him at 90. So like I'm not crazy far ahead of you. Yeah. I have him at a higher yardage. I have him for 885 and 11 touchdowns. Every time I see Christian Watson on the field, he is a threat on every single play.
Oh, yeah.
Say what you will about his health. The Packers invested this offseason into figuring out what the hamstring injuries were. They literally went to UW-Madison Medical and were like, figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
They invested into it. So if Watson can stay healthy, planning on him being healthy. I haven't heard a single thing about his hamstring the entire preseason and haven't heard him being held out of anything for leg soreness or anything like that.
Not even rest days.
Watson being healthy.
He hasn't even taken rest days. So
nothing. So I'm planning on him being healthy. A full healthy season of Christian Watson would not shock me at all that he goes for double-digit touchdowns. We've seen him go for multiple touchdowns a bunch of times, and he's missed like 11 games in his first 2 years.
Yeah, dude, I will gladly be wrong about Christian Watson like I was with Jordan Love's rushing ability. Like, gladly. I'll wear that one.
Zach said he's going to Madison for grad school. Hey, study hamstring injuries. You'll be a rich man being a professional trainer for professional athletes.
Right.
Hey, Scott, and you know, he could be closer to 1,000, but the problem is it's not that I don't think he has that ability or I wouldn't do that on another team if he's fully healthy. The problem is I think we have 4 very good wide receivers.
Yeah.
And they're going to all get targets and they're all going to be part of the game plan. And that's a very good situation for us to be in. Like Tyler has been talking about target distribution for the last 2 years.
Let's do it. Let's have the conversation.
James, we don't do number ones. We don't do it.
You want to know who's the number one? Whoever the play is called for, James. That's how many good wide receivers we have.
It's going to be different every single week.
Yep, every single play, literally.
Touche.
James, go ask Matt LaFleur that question and see what his response is.
I love that he answered that he was going to vomit. Scott said whoever's open gets the ball.
Yep.
Absolutely. And just throwing it out there, I've been saying it, like Brian said, for about a year and a half. I don't want to get stuck in the fantasy football wide receiver 1 or the Madden go-to guy that you're going to throw the ball to every single play. because that takes the opponent's ability to go like, okay, we take away this guy, we take away Devontae Adams. Oh, now who do they have? Now it's like we take away Christian Watson, and it's like, oh, we only have Romeo Doubs, Jayden Reed, and Dontayvion Wicks to throw to, plus tight ends that we trust.
In talking of realms, if you want to talk about fantasy football, the Packers have 4 wide receiver 3/flex options that you could start. They might get 2 receptions. They might get 9.
And they might get no touchdowns, or they might get 3.
Remember, for the last 15 years, it's like trying to start a running back out of the Patriots backfield. That's what you're running into with the Packers wide receiver.
I love that.
You don't know who's
so
going to
much.
go off. And that's why I've pretty much stayed away from them.
Yep.
I mean, I got Dontayvion Wicks for $2 yesterday.
Yeah,
So
I'll start him. Don't get me wrong. I'll start him in a flex spot, or because I have Jordan Love in my Dynasty League, which 2 years ago I traded Daniel Jones. This is Dynasty League. So before I knew Jordan Love was going to start, so before his first year, I traded Daniel Jones for Jordan Love, and my buddy was like, "Okay, let's see who wins this trade." I think I feel pretty good about that one.
So. James, I know you weren't asking for fantasy reasons, and for people talking fantasy in the comments, we play fantasy football, but these stat projections have nothing to do with fantasy football. These are strictly on the NFL field as we see them. Brad said no number one is another reason why we could give Love the big deal. That's a fair point. And it's also a reason to give him the big deal, because now you're paying Jordan Love to spread the ball around to all these weapons.
Yep.
There's 2 players on the Packers, if we're talking about it, that you would want to draft to actually be starters for your team, and that's Jordan Love and Josh Jacobs. That's it.
Yep.
Because you don't know what's going to happen with Musgrave and Kraft yet. So, but off of fantasy football onto these projections.
Okay. So going on to quote unquote wide receiver 2, Romeo Doubs. Now we consensus have Romeo Doubs 63 receptions on 92 targets for 682 yards and 8 touchdowns. Now, gonna pat myself on the back here. I'm the closest on this one. Off by a reception, 3 targets, 6 yards, and 1 touchdown. So very close on Romeo Doubs.
Dang.
I'm very close.
we were all pretty close on this. Bryant had the lowest receptions at 59. Jake was the highest at 65. We're all really close here. We're all within 6 targets. We're all within about 100 yards, and we're all within a handful of touchdowns. Simon had them the lowest at 6. Jake had them at 10. I mean, we're all pretty consensus on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Scott said speed kills. Watson and Melton are freaking fast. Yeah. Oh, Zach, that's not even 16 of our touchdowns. Remember, we had 2 for Josh Jacobs. So that's we're up to 18. And we haven't gotten to Jayden Reed and Dontayvion Wicks yet.
Or Musgrave or Kraft.
But this is where we get to. It's like there's so many guys on here that can score tons and tons of touchdowns. That's why Jordan Love's numbers start to look in the 40s. And it's not shocking to think about it. And yes, Justin, I'm glad you brought it up, because Jake had him at 10. I have him at 9 touchdowns. Simon at 6 and Bryant at 7. Doubs is the red zone guy.
He's the throw up the fade and let him dog somebody. I mean, James, if you're still here, you remember that, right? I don't know if you week 3 last year. That was fun for me. You know, the heart hand and all that stuff. That was fun.
You hit him in the corners too. Like he had the corner touchdown wasn't the Chargers, but it was
that toe tap touchdown.
Yep, and then he got up and he did the love. Yep.
Yeah.
Good times.
Yeah.
Scott said Reed and Doubs catch everything. Wicks is the best route runner, and Watson could be your best deep threat. I mean, there's so many options.
I think Wicks ran 1 route in the preseason.
James, I love you.
And it went for a 60-yard touchdown.
Yeah, that'll do. Scott said I think Reed and Wicks look at a lot of red zone catches too. Isn't this such a fun problem to have?
Oh. No, imagine a defensive coordinator thinking about this.
Thank you for saying that.
And if you've been paying attention to like a lot of the beat writers and stuff, they said that there's a play that a route that Romeo Doubs will run that it's only been stopped once. Essentially, is all you've seen is stop once, and that was by Jaire Alexander finally once in the red zone that they've been running. I think it's like a in out that Doubs runs, and I guess he absolutely burnt the Baltimore Ravens with it too. So we'll see that. So you could be right. Doubs could, and tell people, key on that play after the first touchdown or two. that'll be a quick couple for him, I think, right there. That's my prediction. Dobbs will be the first touchdown of the season.
Ooh,
I like that. Zach asked, who is the Eagles cornerback 1 right now?
I don't know. They better start praying. They got a little over a week.
Scott said again, whoever's open, Musgrave and Kraft are great too. Absolutely. Zach said Watson's 9 route is untouchable. Him and Tyreek are the best at that.
I think Jamar Chase is pretty good at a 9 route.
That's fair. Touche. Yeah. Okay. Let's go to Jayden Reed. So Jayden Reed, we have consensus at 66 receptions on 94 targets for 826 yards and 6 more touchdowns. Zach, keep track of how many touchdowns we're up to. Jake was the closest on the consensus on Jayden Reed. We're all pretty close. I had him at 59 receptions. Bryant was the highest at 70. Bryant had about 104 targets.
Wow. I love that.
The top target on the team. So, Bryant, do you want to give your thoughts on Jayden Reed being the top target?
Yeah, I just think with if Musgrave and Watson are healthy, that stretches the field so much that you're going to see Jayden Reed open, in the middle of the field and those short routes just constantly. And then you have to worry about Wicks' route running and, Dobbs' strong hand and stuff. I just feel like it's going to open so many quick, targets for Reed. You're going to see a lot of those little pop passes, I think, to him behind the line of scrimmage. We see him do that, near the goal line and stuff. So I do think that he could be the target, the most targeted guy. He's just a slot player. I think we run a lot of slants, a lot of things like that. So that's where I have him getting a lot of targets.
I think it's funny that we keep talking about, a wide receiver, whether it's Watson, Dobbs, now Reed, and one of the other guys enters the conversation.
Every time. You can't talk about one guy without talking about the next guy. And to be honest with you, this wide receiver room is just so inspiring because they all love each other and they all are happy for each other when they eat. If Reed has a great game, the first 2 people over there are Watson and Dobbs. If Wicks is having a great game, Reed and Dobbs are going over there. Like, these guys love each other. They're the best group on this team, and I'm just so excited for them.
Yeah, and don't forget Reed was everyone's like, oh, he's like the 7th best rookie wide receiver last year. That's because the one that people are putting right above him in terms of stats and stuff played 200 more snaps than him. So he's gonna get more snaps this year.
Zach said Reed compatible to Cobb. I'm assuming he meant comparable to Cobb as far as play style. I think they play the same position. They both play slot receiver, but I think Jayden Reed's faster. I think Cobb was probably stronger. And then I would say Jayden Reed is a better contested catch player. That's just something that hasn't been brought up. Something that we brought up when he was first drafted was his contested catch ability at Michigan State.
Yeah, I think the thing that made Randall Cobb special was he had the legs like a running back. You always talk about that in football. Like, he had a thick lower base. So I thought that allowed him to have run after catch ability, which was crazy. But I think Reed is a little bit more cat quick, side to side quickness kind of guy. So I do hear the conversation for it because they do technically play the same position, but I think Reed is also a little bit better on the outside than Cobb was.
Yeah, I absolutely love Randall Cobb too. So that's.
Oh yeah, I love Randall Cobb too.
So I do think Jayden Reed has the potential to have a better career than Randall Cobb for sure. I mean, he's got a lot to prove yet, but yeah.
Scott said the Cobb played quarterback too, so had that perspective.
That's very fair.
Yeah. Okay, ready to move on to Dontayvion Wicks.
Oh, yeah, baby.
Dontayvion Wicks. Here we go. Zach, you keeping track? I think we're up to 30 touchdowns now. Dontayvion Wicks, we have consensus 50 receptions on 75 targets for 691 yards and 6 touchdowns. Bryant was the closest on the consensus for this one, but we were all within about 100 yards. And Jake had him with the most receptions and the most targets. Jake, you have Dontayvion Wicks at 93 targets.
Bro, he's open. He's still open right now. Like, tomorrow, he's open. Thursday, he's open. September 6th, he's wide the fuck open. Like, he's open, bro. He literally is cooking people. I was like, there's no, we're talking about comments, right? And Scott keeps bringing it up. Whoever is open. Dontayvion Wicks is open. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, he's the best route runner. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's where all the – we spent all summer with media personalities being like, I could see him being the next Devontae Adams because of his route running. Like when you watch him run routes, it's understandable to see why people are comparing him to Devontae Adams. I mean, and just throwing this out there, Devontae Adams struggled with drops early in his career. Just throwing it out there. Don't shoot the messenger.
Hey.
Before we move on, I'm going to give Zach a shout out because Zach gave us a really nice compliment. He said, you guys are compatible with each other. I love how you bounce off each other's ideas as well.
Yeah, the fun part is that we don't actually share these with the Tyler's the only one that knows all these stats before we do this show. So the fact we're on the same brain wave is kind of nice because that helps the show mesh, and we're all kind of want to be optimistic and have a good outlook. Even I might become a different person while the game's on, but I become a level-headed person about a half an hour to an hour afterwards and reflect on it. So that's our goal here.
Yeah, Zach, we appreciate the compliment. Yes, we do appreciate it. And I will say this: Scott said, "Great minds think alike," and then so do yours.
I love that comment, dude.
I will say, we're gonna post these leading up to the first game, and there's gonna be people commenting and being like, "Oh, who are you guys? Predict stats." Listen, we're podcasters. That's what we're doing here. But I promise you, hours of work went into this. I promise you. Dude, and not just by me to compile them, but hours between the four of us, and then hours on top of it to compile them all, add them all up, average them all out, make all the graphics for them, and present them here. I mean, we're not just pulling these numbers out of our ass. We are like looking at previous years, looking at college staff, looking at I'm telling you right now, all the touchdowns that I projected on all the wide receivers, they add up to Jordan Love's numbers.
Yep, mine too.
And I look at for me, I look at NFL numbers too. I'm like thinking, okay, well, I think we'll be a top 5 offense. Let me go look at how many touchdowns the top 5 offenses scored in the NFL last year. And that's what I'll kind of base my number off of. That's where I pull the 50 extra points out of. That's where I pull the completion percentage. That's why I said 68 point, whatever is high. I think Tua was 69%. A lot of average was 66, 67%. So that's why I was like, oh man, that's a little high. But that, we're putting a little bit of work in that. I bet you anything, I didn't go back and look at them, but I bet you if we went and looked back at some of our I know we did a show on it, but all the players that actually stayed healthy for a year, I would say there were some we were within 1% or 2% of our stat predictions on what they ended up.
Yeah. Our consensus numbers from last year were pretty close on a lot of guys. And we looked at some of the guys like Aaron Jones last year. If he would have been healthy, our numbers would have been on pace. Our numbers are close when we put the 4 of us together.
And we had a really good prediction on Jordan Love with not even seeing him play.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to get to a point. We're going to have some rookies on here. We're going to have some rookies. Some of the things that we did when we get to, I'll throw out safeties, for example. I went and looked at previous second-round pick safeties, third-round pick safeties, and compared them and the college stats of the guys that we're going to talk about. So Scott said it. You guys research a shit ton. We do, I promise. So we're going to continue. So last wide receiver, we did do Bo Melton. Nothing super crazy on here. We have Bo Melton, 20 catches, 30 targets, 268 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Nothing super crazy. Yeah, I mean, anything you guys want to say on Bo Melton? I think Bryant and myself were the closest on his, because Bryant and I had the exact same projection for Bo Melton.
That's crazy, actually, to be honest.
We both had Bo Melton 20 for 28 for 260 and 2.
Wow.
The exact same numbers.
I will say he's a little bit of a wild card because of how fast he is. So if you take Watson out, yes, he's so if you take Watson out and people start to relax because they think the deep ball guy is out, and then you have Bo Melton in there and you're just like, haha, we still have another deep ball guy. I don't know. These stats could be completely wrong on Bo Melton. Who knows? Maybe this
obviously our projections are all based on okay, we think they're all going to play 17 games this year.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. Spoiler, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, you mean that people get hurt in football? That's weird.
Yeah.
What a time to be alive. Okay. Scott said they may use him as an underarm guy too. They did do a couple times in the preseason, so
true.
Motion out of the slot for sure. Yeah.
Okay, you guys ready to move on to tight ends?
Yes. Still ready.
Here we go. Starting with Luke Musgrave. These are our consensus numbers on Luke Musgrave: 50 receptions, on 65 targets for 517 yards and 4 touchdowns. This is Jake's 5th guy over 500 yards.
I got to say, I got to toot my own horn real quick. I had him at 75 receptions last year. He had 46 in 11 games. If you do the math on that, he was on pace for 75.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, I'm pretty good at that. I have him for 60 targets this year, which I'm like, it's tough because he didn't play a whole year, but he had a crazy injury. I really see Luke Musgrave having a pretty good year. 500 yards and 3 touchdowns on my sheet. If he did that, he'd be like our 5th best wide receiver, which would be insane for 500 yards.
I have him at 69 targets, but I have him at 52 receptions. So I have him only for 3 more receptions, and you only 5 more receptions than Bryant, who was the lowest at 47.
Yeah.
Bryant had him at 5 touchdowns. So Bryant, do you think he's going to be a red zone guy?
I do. I think he's going to be red zone. I think he can out jump a lot of people. I think he's got the speed and the quickness to, run some of those quick twitch routes. So I do think that he'll be a target monster in the red zone for sure. And I think the only reason we're not talking about him going for 75 receptions like Jake said is because the emergence of Tucker Kraft. So, which I'm sure it'll probably reflect on this next slide.
Yep, I think you're going to see that. I agree. We're all within 38 yards of each other on Musgrave's yards. Jake had him at 500, Bryant at 510, me at 520, and Simon at 538. So we're all real close on Luke Musgrave. Scott said Kraft is too. They're both big red zone targets. Let's just go to Tucker Kraft. So our Kraft consensus numbers have him for 36 catches and 46 targets for 378 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Nicely done,
Tyler. I gotta say, man, your graphic making abilities have seriously impressed me. Like this.
Yeah, you have graduated to a master's degree here in the last couple of years.
You have stepped up your game.
There's more like this too. Some of them are kind of subtle, so we'll get to that as well. Myself, Bryant, Jake, all in at 3 touchdowns. Simon only at 2, but Simon had him the highest yards. Simon had him for 473 yards. I had it on my notes to have Simon talk about Tucker Kraft being a big Kraft guy. Jake, Bryant, myself, we all had him at 40 targets. Simon had him at 64.
Wow.
So Simon had almost a perfect split between Musgrave and Kraft.
Oh, wow.
And that goes to Matt LaFleur's comments that he does believe that they are interchangeable. And it goes even to the draft where they were okay with drafting each of these 2 tight ends at the other position that they drafted them.
Yep.
That's right, the infamous dribble his head pick. Yeah, I couldn't resist. I'm like, oh, we're putting Tucker Kraft on a graphic. I got a picture that I need.
Hey, shout out to the Vikings for cutting their first round draft pick from 2 years ago today.
Yeah, wasn't he? Was he a second round pick or was he first round?
Or was he second? Oh,
I think he was second.
He was second.
Yeah. Jake was a big fan of Luis Seen.
Yeah, I was, but then he wasn't good, so
and he was hurt. So
happens.
Okay, so we're gonna go now to Ben Sims, and we consensus Ben Sims. I think you can tell by our consensus numbers that we viewed Musgrave and Kraft as the big dogs here. We have Sims 9 catches for 14 targets for 87 yards and a touchdown. Similarly to Scott said he was a first. Similar to Bo Melton. Just if the other guys in the room are healthy, his role is going to be much smaller.
Yep.
Okay. Are you guys ready to go from offense to defense?
I'm ready, dude.
Those were our offensive stat projections. Zach, if you're still counting, tell me how many touchdowns we're up to and see if they add up to Jordan Love's. When I did mine, I had 6 receptions for 144 yards and 1 touchdown left over to be accounted for from someone else, whether it be Malik Heath or Grant DuBose or Emmanuel Wilson, like anything like that. So that was what I had left over. So our offensive numbers are done. We're going to go to defense.
Yes.
Starting with Kenny Clark. So our Kenny Clark numbers now on the defensive line, we did add in run stops because we have subscriptions to Pro Football Focus, which we don't love the grades as much, but they have a lot of useful statistics, one of them being run stops. So we have run stops as a projected stat this year between the four of us, that we did that as well, and passes defensed on the defensive line for bat downs. I just put passes defense because that's what they're called, but it's essentially guys getting their hands in the passing lane and getting bat downs. Mm-hmm. Zach said Clark got paid. He's going to be a monster.
I would say paid again. Yep.
Third contract. Love that.
And Packers don't do that very often. So
yeah. Scott said Scene was the final first-round pick, so he was the 32nd pick.
Yep. I remember him being one of the last picks, though.
So we have Kenny Clark, consensus, 46 tackles, 51 pressures, 8 sacks, 2 passes defensed, and 23 run stops. We're all pretty even on this one, except for Jake. Jake, you got him low on pressures. You have him down at 30. Bryant has him at 65. I have him at 50, and Simon at 58. So, Jake, this is spoiler alert, this isn't the last guy that Jake has low pressures on. So, Jake, you have the floor to explain yourself on low pressures.
Okay, so 2 things. First of all, Packers front is going to focus much more on running the ball. I think teams are going to have to try to attack us with the run. And I think that the first couple of weeks, we're probably going to struggle against the run and the pass until they kind of really figure things out. Going up against the Eagles week 1 in Brazil with Saquon Barkley, they're going to run the ball. I mean, they have 2 really good wide receivers. Jalen Hurts is a run-first quarterback, in my opinion. He's not the most accurate quarterback in the world, but when he gets his feet going and takes away the middle of the field with that linebacker, he can start hitting A.J. Brown in the middle of the field, also Dallas Goedert. Week 2,
Dotson, which was surprising.
Right. Week 2, we go up against Richardson, another running quarterback. So I wanted to kind of be a little bit more realistic and let the defense kind of get into the flow of things. Also, I think we're going to be rotating people a lot. I don't think Kenny Clark needs to be playing a bazillion snaps this year like he was the last couple of years. Now, I understand that he's only 28, 29 years old, but he's also been playing in the NFL since he was 20. So he's still getting wear and tear in his body before 30 years old. So I think rotating him out a little bit more is going to be key. And Brooks and Wyatt are going to get plenty of snaps, in my opinion, at D tackle. So
it also doesn't help that Kenny Clark was 26 for what felt like 4 years in a row.
Yeah.
I just think he's going to live in the backfield.
And, I can see it. I hope for it.
And think about it like the Eagles were playing Eagles week 1. They no longer have Jason Kelce in the middle of their offense. Like, I don't know who their center is. I guess I'd have to look it up, but I'd be scared if I was him.
And now the Packers aren't running 3-4. They're running 4-3. So they're going to put Kenny and Wyatt next to each other, and they're not running a 2-man front.
Yeah.
They have 4 guys with their hand in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, we were all pretty even on everything, including the run stops. So good job, everybody. Scott said he likes Brooks. We have Karl Brooks coming up. Next, we have Devonte Wyatt. We have him consensus, 41 tackles, 46 pressures, 7.5 sacks, 1 pass defense, and 24 run stops. Hand to the dirt is key this season. Zach said. Jake, again, had low pressures on Wyatt. He gave his reasoning for it.
Yep.
So there's that. Other than that, nothing too shocking on our
consensus numbers are high, man. I thought I was high at 6, but I would love to see him get 7.5, and I think it's possible with them 2 next to each other. I think they're going to and the way Devonte gets off the line, this could be a breakout season for him. This could be the pay me season.
You had him at 6. Jake, virtual high five.
Hey,
we both had him at 7.5.
Yeah, we did.
Simon had him at 9. So
Holy,
in the middle at 7.5, and Jake and I were already there. So
wow. 9 sacks for Wyatt is crazy talk, dude.
I'd be happy.
Justin said, bring on the big nasties, clog the middle.
Love that.
Oh, Zach, we're getting to Van Ness. We have him also. We have 31 slides here, guys. We have 31 players that we projected this year.
Yeah, this took a long time, so I hope everybody appreciates this.
and there's 3 that got left off because we projected them and they got cut or hurt.
Yeah.
So there was 34 of these, and we're only using 31 tonight.
Man.
Okay. Next is TJ Slaton. We have TJ Slaton consensus of 44 tackles, 14 pressures, 1.5 sacks, 3 passes defense, and 28 run stops. Bryant, I'm going to come to you on Slaton. You have him at 17 run stops. Jake has him at 24. I have him at 35. Simon at 36. I was just wondering if you have any thoughts on why you have him lower in the run game.
Yeah, I think it's just because we're going to see a lot of rotation. You know what I mean? We're still talking about, and I don't know how they're going to put everyone on the line, but, you know, if we're having Devonte Wyatt that much, maybe Slaton's going to miss some snaps. We have Brooks, who's played really well. We have Colby Wooden, who's played really well. We have LVN, who's played really well. I think the main couple people like Wyatt, Devonte Wyatt, I know he wasn't getting the starts with the team, but I just feel like he's going to break out. I feel like they're going to be like, we have to have him on the field. So that's why I had him a little bit lower, but I do think he'll still have a fine season. But I do think he's like along the defensive line, he's towards the bottom a little bit. But although there was a couple freaking plays he made in preseason, it seemed like he was moving in warp speed compared to some of the other people. So this would be like one of the ones that I'm like, Jake, I'll be happy to be wrong, but this dude was in the backfield before the quarterback even got the ball from the center's hand. And it wasn't a flag. He was just a good get off. He did. I think I recall it 2 or 3 times it happened.
Mm-hmm. Justin said it's actually very interesting to see what you guys think on the stats. Definitely appreciate the time you put into this. Thank you for appreciating it. We appreciate
you. We appreciate you for being here for it.
And that's why we do this as its own show, to talk about the stats. And then like I take everybody's in. So everybody sends me theirs individually. Like Simon, Jake, Bryant, they don't see each other's. They don't see mine. I see everybody's and I put them together. And then what I do is I look for the numbers that are what you would say the outliers or the standalone numbers. And then I ask the guys about that and we generate conversation out of it. So, well, Zach, I appreciate that you would take ours as more credible than yours. No offense. Like I said, hours of work go into these and we appreciate that people appreciate them. And I wanted to give the ability for people to see them on the screen this year versus me just saying them out loud and then us having a 5-minute conversation about each player and people not knowing where we're at. Mm-hmm. So I wanted it to be on screen and tangible for people to be able to see, review, think about, and not only have to hear it once and then not understand it again. So
yeah, I like this format. Good job,
yeah.
Tyler.
Okay. On to Karl Brooks. We have Karl Brooks consensus at 33 tackles, 32 pressures, 5 sacks, 4 passes defensed, and 14 run stops. Simon had him kind of low on tackles at 20. And Bryant, you are a fan of his pass rush. You have him at 45 pressures. Jake has him at 20. I have him at 32. Simon at 29. You have him up at 45. You're a big fan of Karl Brooks in the pass rush?
Yeah, I do. I think, like I just said with Slaton, I think we're going to see Karl Brooks and these type of players that, I think with our offense, teams are going to be having to throw a lot. So where TJ Slaton is good against the run and he can get out the ball, I don't think his forte, and he could prove us wrong, but it's not pass rushing, right? That's where you're going to see Karl Brooks, Devonte Wyatt, Kenny Clark on the field more, in my opinion, because teams are going to be having to throw the ball against us and try to maybe play for. If our offense lives up to their potential, teams are going to be coming from behind and try to catch us. And I think that's where you're going to see the sack numbers go up. I think that's where you'll see the interception numbers go up. And I think that's where you'll see these pressures go up.
That's a really good point.
Can I rebuttal?
Can you rebuttal?
Yes.
No.
Well, too bad. I'm going to do it anyways. I think that we're not taking into consideration that outside of Jaire Alexander, our cornerbacks are kind of a question mark. And we have 2 rookies that are going to be playing a lot of safety. Just saying.
We'll see.
They might get the ball out quick before we can get to a pressure. But the potential is a lot of pressure.
Nope, that's it. Shut the show down. 15 slides ago. Who cares? Zach said he took a stats course this summer. Do we take any statistics into our predictions? Yes. And getting into statistics on these, I promise you when I was doing mine hours at a time, like you start to get eye soreness from the amount of numbers we're looking at.
Also, statistic courses suck. So kudos to you.
I've been there. I was good at it, but it didn't make it fun.
I think they're okay. I think we're definitely improved, Scott, but I don't think that they're like top 5 in the league or anything like that. I think Jaire and Xavier McKinney was a big help, but rookies are still going to be rookies. We're going to have to let them grow over the first couple of weeks.
Yep. And we'll get into some of the rookies. We have stat projections for Javon Bullard and Evan Williams coming up. Yep. So we'll get to those guys as well in the secondary.
Yeah.
Scott's getting ahead of us on Keisean Nixon. We're going to get to it. Okay, the last defensive lineman we did do Colby Wooden. I think kind of similarly to the Bo Meltons and the Ben Sims, Colby Wooden kind of factors in as that last guy on the position group. So we have Colby Wooden consensus at 22 tackles, 14 pressures, 2 sacks, 1 pass defense, and 13 run stops. None of us are really far off on anything. We're all within pretty close numbers on this. Colby Wooden, he's the last of the depth guys, the last of the locks for the roster. Yeah, I don't know. Anything you guys want to say on Colby Wooden?
No, I think just good. A good piece that will get maybe 15, 20 snaps a game. I think he'll be good.
Yep, he'll make a play, once in a while, and they'll be like, "Oh, okay, yep, there's Colby Wooden making his presence felt." One of the things that I really liked about him last year was his play recognition.
Yeah, so the 2 deepest groups on this team are wide receiver and defensive line. When you add in the edge rushers, including with the guys that we're talking about right now. So Colby Wooden, I mean, as talented as he may be, and he could probably turn into a really good player in this Packers defensive attack style. He's just a guy that's just lost in the shuffle, just like you said with a Bo Melton. Bo Melton could start on a lot of teams, in my opinion.
Yeah. Got a bunch of comments going on the secondary. We're going to get there. We're going front to back on the defense. Justin said, hot take, our secondary is top 4. Scott said, Bullard to the slot. Shh. Zach said some of our new safeties will play corner in some looks. Shh. We'll see. We're going to get to that. But from now, we're going to go into defensive ends. We're going to start with Rashan Gary. Just had to throw this out there. Got Rashan Gary stepping over.
Where's James? Where's James?
Oh, you guys, I got a couple more of these little subtle things thrown in here. Rashan Gary stepping over a quarterback with an offensive lineman on the ground looking up at him. Had to do it. So we have Rashan Gary consensus of 52 tackles, 68 pressures. We just needed one more. 15 and a half sacks, 2 passes defense, and 22 run stops. On our consensus, we do have Bryant is the closest on the total numbers. But Jake, again, you touched on the pressures already. You have him down at 39.
Yep, we're going to be rotating. We kept 6 edge rushers, dude. And
okay. Let me throw.
Can I ask what you have him at for sacks, Jake?
18.
So he's can convert more than 50% of his pressures into sacks.
He is going to finish this year.
Okay.
Jake also has him the highest number of tackles as well. So do you think he's going to be playing potentially behind the line of scrimmage a little bit?
I think he focused more on run defense this year where he struggled in that area last year. That's what I mean by tackles. A little bit more run defense.
Yeah, you have him at 66. Simon has him down at 40. I have him at 52 and Bryant at 50.
Yeah, I think he'll play more early downs, but dude, the guy literally he's like Giannis. Tyler, this is the example I'm going to use. We literally see Giannis after 3 minutes of play, literally freaking gasping for air because he just runs so hard. That's how I feel the motor is for Rashan Gary.
Melton pouring sweat after 22 seconds in the game.
Yeah, so I mean, he just plays so freaking hard, and he goes after it at 190,000%. He doesn't know any other speed, so I think a lot of rotation. We kept 6, like I said, and I stand by that.
Scott said also 1 interception. Zach, Gary and Clark are the best 2 linemen we have 100 million%.
I will say we need to give respect to Preston Smith, though.
Yeah.
If we're talking about most consistent, it's in my mind, it's still probably Preston Smith.
Preston Smith is, I will double down on it with you. Preston Smith is the most consistent player we've had on the defense probably for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
This number you're seeing right here, this is Preston Smith. This is what he's done since he's come to Green Bay. We have him consensus at 51 tackles, 42 pressures, 8 sacks, 2 passes defense, and 26 run stops. Zach asked, is he on the back end of his career? I think he might be on the back end of his prime. I don't know that he's on the back end of his career.
Yeah.
But until he shows signs of slowing down, I'm not going to bet on it to happen. Hey, Scott said that he's a great cornerback, according to the defensive coordinator. Listen, I know that everybody saw him get matched up with Devonte Adams one time and freaked out. He was actually good in coverage.
Dude, he actually batted down a pass one time in the red zone. I was like, bro, he might actually be our best corner.
and the numbers support it. Like, I'm not in a rush to be like, yeah, let's put Preston Smith in coverage because he's a really good pass rusher, but he's not bad at it.
Yeah, no, he's a smart player. So,
yeah, I remember when people wanted Preston cut and keeps it Darius. Yes, Scott, it is funny, but he is decent in pressure and coverage. He can hold his own.
Yeah.
So Bryant had him only at 6 sacks. I'm just curious if you had any reasoning behind that.
Well, mostly just because I think the snap share, I think that LVN is going to get on the field more. I think that Enagbare played well so far. Probably you're going to see him on the field some more. Karl, I don't know if they're going to slide out Kenny Clark at all onto the end, or if they switch things up. But Preston Smith is getting a little bit older, so I think that he just won't play. It's not. I think his sack rate will probably be pretty consistent with what we've seen. I just think he'll play less snaps.
I just wanted to look because, like I said, he's
averaged like 8.3 sacks a year.
It's
in
been
the 5 years that he's played with us.
Uncanny, his sack numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah. 2023, 8. 2022, 8.5. 2021, 9.
Yep. So, like I said, I think his sack percentage, like in relevance to snaps, will probably be similar. I just think he's going to play a little less snaps.
Yeah, he's almost clockwork, 8 sacks a year. Okay. Now, the aforementioned Lukas Van Ness. This is a fun one. We have Lukas Van Ness, consensus of 46 tackles, 33 pressures, 7 sacks, 2 passes defense, and 24 run stops. Now, Zach asked the question, LVN kind of similar to Clay Matthews. I think I'm going to say this, what I said when he was drafted. I think he's got J.J. Watt type play style in him. I'm not saying he's going to be the next J.J. Watt, but when I watch Lukas Van Ness, like I can see the path to Lukas Van Ness being, J.J. Watt light.
So, I have something to say.
Mm-hmm.
People talk, and we're getting asked questions to me about low pressure rate, and they want to take pressures away from Smith. Now, something that Lukas Van Ness did in college is he not only played defensive end, he also played D tackle snaps. So I can definitely see that as a possibility this year. And that's why when I was going through my pressures and my run stops and my sacks, I was just like, Van Ness could be taking snaps at D tackle, man. We can have a formation with Van Ness next to Gary, next to Clark, next to Preston Smith, which is absolutely filthy. You get size, speed, athleticism. You get all of that with that four-man front. And it's like the ability to do that with this defensive front, I think Hafley's going to have a field day for a couple of weeks there. Where we're just beating up offensive lines.
Yeah. Zach, yes, he was the first-round pick last year, which Jake called to his credit. We had the conversation when Jeff Hafley was hired, who we thought could be the biggest beneficiary of it, and a lot of our answers was Lukas Van Ness.
Yeah.
Very excited to see him in year 2.
Yeah, me too. Got to get that jersey, man.
Yeah. He wears his shoulder pads.
Yeah, dude. His shoulder pads ask him permission to be put on. That's all. Yeah.
And Scott said, I think he may get more sacks than that. Simon had him at 8. Jake had him at 9. I had him at 6.5. Bryant had him at 5. But Bryant also had him at the most pressures.
5's pretty reasonable. I agree with that.
I think he's still not pretty. I think he's still a little raw. I think he's going to still be rotating a lot with Preston Smith and Enagbare. I think next year is when we see. Well, I could be wrong. Hopefully I'm wrong. I would love to watch him go out there and get 10, 12 sacks. I also have us as if I did my numbers and I wanted to add up to like 50 sacks because I think we take that jump. But with me having Clark and Wyatt having, better numbers than Brooks, I couldn't get, 50 sacks would be a high number. So everyone unfortunately can't have double digits. But I just think Lukas Van Ness, and with that rotation on that line, will just a lot of it, kind of like the wide receivers, a lot of them are going to be similar numbers, except for Gary, who, in my opinion, might jump off the page, and Kenny Clark from the interior. So,
yeah. Justin said he got an LVN salute to service jersey. Nice. Scott said he thinks 8 or 9. Totally within the realm of possibility. And that's why we consensus these numbers out, because we have a variation from Bryant at 5 to Jacob at 9. And that's where Simon at 8, myself at 6.5. That's where we get this 7.0 number, is from the 4 of us coming together on this.
Yeah.
I think you'd find a lot more variability in each of our individual numbers. But when you put the 4 of us together and we as a consensus put these numbers out here, and you get those 4 perspectives all mixed in to one consensus number that we're putting out there as a show, I think that's where we do good work. Scott said if the other teams are playing from behind like we think, they may get more than 50.
True.
Totally possible.
I absolutely love that.
You basically 3 a game for 17 weeks is 51.
Yeah.
So, okay. Let's go to Kingsley Enagbare. I've talked about him a little bit already. We have him consensus at 36 tackles, 25 pressures, 4 sacks, 1 pass defense, and 16 run stops. Simon was the closest on this one. Bryant has him at high pressures at 35. Jake has him low at 10. But then Bryant and Jake, you guys both have him down for 10 run stops. So I don't know if you guys have thoughts on Kingsley Enagbare maybe not being great against the run.
It's not even that. Like, it just goes back to what I've been saying, the rotation. I think there's so many, like, to try to disperse the run stops out. That's where I ended up. And kind of just looking at numbers from previous years, I guess that's kind of what I averaged out. But as much as I would love for everyone to have high run stop numbers, I just don't think that's possible. But that's why I have it. Someone isn't going to eat, put it that way. Someone's going to have lower numbers. Unfortunately. So
yeah. Zach, he was projected originally to be back some point in the middle of the year, but then it was found out that his ACL wasn't torn and that he's just a superhuman freak, and he's back.
Yeah.
I did put the feeler out there with John when I was talking with him on Lombardi Time Brews when we were doing the live cut down show, that it's possible, it doesn't seem like there's any restrictions on him, but it's possible that maybe he's on a snap count to begin the year. And that was maybe one of my reasons that I had for Cox and Mosby both making the roster, was if they were going to have Enagbare on a snap count to start the year.
Yep, that's one of my reasons. I think you have to give him time to come back from the injury fully. So I think by mid-year, when he was originally projected to be back, he'll be up to full speed.
I do remember he was getting a decent amount of snaps in the preseason game, so they must feel he's in a pretty good position. So we'll see.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say on potentially low run stops, this is something that I've seen from him the last couple of years, is I want to see him improve at setting edges.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mosby definitely earned that spot, in my opinion. I agree with that.
All right. Here we go to middle linebacker, starting with Quay Walker. We have him consensus at 134 tackles. Here you can see him sacking Justin Fields last season. We also have him with 19 pressures, 3 sacks, 5 passes defense, and 49 run stops. Jake, we're going to get into some questions here on some linebackers, starting with Quay Walker. Now, we all are pretty close on the numbers. You have him at 126 tackles. Simon at 131, and then Bryant and I have him at 140. Out of his 126 tackles, you have him stopping 70 runs out of his 126 tackles.
If the Packers are going to be a top 5 defense, they're going to have to stop the goddamn run. And if they're going to stop the goddamn run, it's going to be Quay Walker.
Oh, not just Quay Walker.
It's going to be a lot of Quay Walker, dude. That's all I'm saying. He's coming from the backside. He's going to have to clean some stuff up. Yeah.
And Scott, to that point, Bryant and I both have him at 140 tackles.
Yeah.
So, Bryant, you only have him at 25 run stops.
Yeah, that's just based off what he's done previously. I mean, it's hard to predict when you change your defensive style. So you could be right, Jake. He could be the one that's doing the cleanup with all these, big linemen eating up the blocks and everything, and then Quay running through the hole and getting those run stops. So potentially, that would be amazing. That'd be a high number of run stops.
Spoiler alert: Jake's got a higher one.
So
spoiler alert. Okay. Simon was the closest on the consensus numbers here, but next we're going to go to the rookie. Now, this, like I said, this is a guy we haven't even seen in the preseason. All we've heard about him is practices. Mm-hmm. Now, when we're talking about Edgerrin Cooper, what I did was I looked at other second-round linebackers. Then I looked at Edgerrin Cooper's numbers in college, and then I kind of just factored in what I think his role is going to be. That's how I went about Edgerrin Cooper. Now, our consensus numbers have him at 71 tackles, 12 pressures, 1.5 sacks, 3 passes defense, 26 run stops. Bryant, your numbers are the closest on our consensus, so good job there. Nothing super outlierish on Cooper.
Yeah.
Okay. This next one gets a little crazy. We're talking Isaiah McDuffie.
You're welcome.
And yes, Jake, I'm going to be coming back to you on Isaiah McDuffie. Between him and we added Eric Wilson. So after McDuffie, we're going to go to Eric Wilson. So Zach said he's sad we didn't get to see him much in the preseason. We'll see what his role is going to be like compared to Isaiah McDuffie and Eric Wilson, who we're going to talk about in a second. But McDuffie here, we have consensus at 84 tackles, 8 pressures, half a sack, 4 passes defensed, and 36 run stops. Jake has Isaiah McDuffie at 110 tackles.
Yep.
I have him at 90, Simon at 60, Bryant at 75. Now, I am the closest on the consensus numbers here, but out of his 110 tackles, Jake has him down for 89 run stops.
Listen.
What's classified as a run stop? That's within like 2 yards of the line, right?
Yes. Listen.
Okay.
He is not on the field to guard the pass. He's on the field for one goddamn reason. Go hit the running back who is holding the football. There's a reason he's balding, okay? Because he just goes head first. I'm telling you, he has one job. You go forward, Bobby Boucher, and you go hit somebody. And I'm telling you, if this team is going to be top 5 and they're going to struggle the first couple of weeks, teams are going to try to run the ball against us. I see a high number of run stops in the first couple of weeks. I have some of my notes done for next week. I have to finish them. But you will hear some of my projections on the defensive line next week. But I'm telling you, if this defense is going to be top 5, they're going to have to stop the damn run. It's going to be those 2 linebackers. We're still going to play a lot of 4-2-5. Cooper will play some, but the 2 linebackers on the field will be McDuffie and Quay Walker. And they will be the ones that have to stop the run.
With your run stop numbers, man, you think teams are going to average about 2.4 yards a carry against us?
Bro, do you want to win a damn Super Bowl?
Yeah, but that would be like historic level.
Dude, they have the deepest defensive line room in the league, in my opinion.
He's got some of the pass rushers a little bit lower on the run stops too, though, to be fair. But I still think it's high. I totally get where you're coming from.
I like your optimism, Jake.
Yeah.
Dude, they got to stop the run. That's their job.
Okay. All right, let's move on to Eric Wilson. He was added when it was basically reported that he was going to be the other starting linebacker with Quay and McDuffie. And then Cooper, not playing a ton in the preseason also became a factor in this. So we added Eric Wilson. Justin, they all wear G's. They're just different colors now. So we added Eric Wilson into our stat projections. We have him consensus at 45 tackles, 9 pressures, a sack, 4 passes defense, and 28 run stops. This is just kind of a depth linebacker guy. Bryant is a little bit lower on Wilson, a little bit higher on Cooper. I don't know if you want to give some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I just think Cooper will take over the position. I think around midseason, so I had their numbers pretty close. And I think McDuffie is going to get his fair share of snaps. I think Quay Walker is the one that's going to be on the field all the time. I think the other 3 rotate.
That's fair. Jake, you have him down for 60 tackles, 55 of them being run stops.
I think he's going to take more of the snaps from Cooper in the beginning of the season, kind of like I thought about Marshawn Lloyd, where Lloyd will kind of take over athletically from A.J. Dillon later in the year. I kind of see the same kind of thing happening with Eric Wilson and Edgerrin Cooper, I should say.
So I'm going to say this. If we're talking about the highest of the high on what we're projecting on some of these individual stats, if the way that we see them in the optimistic viewpoint happens, this Packers team is going to be insane on both sides of the ball.
Just telling you, the linebackers have to be the one to stop the run. I know the D-line will a little bit, but the linebackers have to be
in that phrase that I just said when we get to safeties. Okay. Spoiler alert. Not really a spoiler, but I'm pretty high on Xavier McKinney. Going into cornerbacks, starting with Jaire Alexander, we have him consensus at 54 tackles, 12 pass breakups, 4 interceptions, 38 receptions allowed on 70 targets, and 3 touchdowns allowed. Zach said, I think Cooper and Hopper have better numbers than Wilson. It'll just depend on the role, I think. Okay. On Jaire Alexander. Brian was the closest on the consensus. Honestly, none of us are really super far off. I have him at some higher tackle numbers just because I think I also have him the lowest on targets, the amount of times he's going to be targeted. just because I think once Jaire Alexander's out there, he's on an island and you're not throwing at him. That's how I feel about him. I think he's going to be the least targeted player as a starter I see here. Justin said Alexander with a pick 6 as well. I'm on board. That's why I also have him at just 2 interceptions. So does Jake.
Yep.
And then the touchdowns were all pretty even there as well. Bryant, kudos to you. You were the closest on the consensus. Anything you guys want to say on Jaire Alexander?
Yeah, I think the reason I had his tackles lower was because I don't think he'll be, I only had the 70 targets, so and 35 receptions or whatever I had in my prediction. So I think he won't have that many tackles because he'll just kind of be standing on next to his guy while they watch the play develop. So because
that's not going to go. Why I have him lower on the passes defense. I only have him down for 9. Bryant, you and Jake both have him down for 14. I just think he's going to be thrown at less. I think the opposing teams are going to try to target the other guys more.
Yeah.
And yes, Zach said the pack is back 100%.
Well, he has one other famous word where he goes, huh?
I still love the video of him jumping up behind Jordan Love while he's in the middle of an interview, and he wraps his arm around and he's like, QB1, man. That's QB in the league right here.
I love that video where the news person's like, as you can see, Packers fans here are excited.
Yeah, dude, that's so funny.
Oh, man. Zach said he didn't know how to spell.
That's pretty close. I'd probably spell it like that, too.
That's Hua. That's
bad. Maybe throw a couple of U's in there.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, let's go to Eric Stokes. Eric Stokes, we have consensus at 54 tackles, 10 passes defensed, 3 interceptions, 54 receptions allowed on 85 targets, and 5 touchdowns. Simon was actually the closest on this, but we're all pretty even here, except for Jake. Jake, you have him down for 16 passes defensed.
They got to throw at somebody, dude. And he's getting their second wide receiver, right? So, and again, we are projecting that he's going to be healthy for the entire year.
Mm-hmm.
I also have him with 5 ints, and I think that we play some mid quarterbacks during the season. So I think that there can be some bad throws, some forced throws. We all have some pressure numbers. People are going to be worried about Rashan Gary off the edge. I have him as a high sack number, so maybe they get trigger finger right there. And 16 passes defense. When you think about that, not too bad.
I think we see a return to at least rookie form Stokes this year and possibly better. I haven't heard a lot about him about this offseason, but what do you the saying, no news is good news? I've heard that. Well, actually, I've heard he's been consistent and solid. So, I'm pretty excited to have him back in the fold.
I think cornerback and offensive line are the 2 positions that if you don't hear their names a lot, that's a good thing.
100%.
Okay. Let's go to second year Carrington Valentine. We have him consensus 34 tackles, 7 pass breakups, 2 interceptions, 40 receptions allowed on 57 targets, and 4 touchdowns allowed. I mean, nothing super crazy here. I was the closest on the consensus numbers, but looking at all of our numbers, we're all pretty close on what our consensus turned out to be here. So, Carrington Valentine, we're just looking at a second-year cornerback.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he's a fun player, man. Like on Sundays when you're watching, and Jaire's doing his thing and Gary and Clark are coming off the edge, but every once in a while, Carrington Valentine takes over for 4 or 5 minutes, and we're all just laughing about it. Like this photo showing, like him just going absolutely insane at Puka Nacua and pointing at him and talking the most shit possible. And now you add a guy like Javon Bullard in there. I mean, my goodness, dude. We have such a fun team, dude.
Nice recollection on the point. Good job.
You're welcome. My memory isn't the greatest, but, man, you want to talk some football, I can do that all day, my man.
I don't remember what I ate for breakfast yesterday, but I can tell you that Carrington Valentine pointing was at Puka Nacua. It was week 9.
Tell you that too.
23, and Brett Rippon started because Matt Stafford had turf toe.
I was at that game, and I don't even remember him pointing.
Okay. So the last of the cornerbacks we have here, Keisean Nixon. Now, this is going to generate some conversation here. Now, we have him in consensus at 57 tackles, 7 passes defense, 2 interceptions, 58 receptions allowed on 72 targets, and 4 touchdowns. I have him the lowest. I have him at 62 tackles, so I do have him higher there, but I have him facing 59 targets. Bryant has him facing 48 targets, Simon has him facing 84 and Jake 96. So Bryant and I have similar thoughts on this, and we've discussed this. It's popped up in the comments. Bryant, why do we think Keisean Nixon is going to be playing fewer opponent targets?
Because I think we're going to see Bullard in the slot, and I think we're going to see Evan Williams next to McKinney.
I strongly agree with you.
Keisean Nixon, as much as I said it last year, I thought we overpaid him. This spring when we paid him, I said I thought we overpaid. That was when we signed him this, and I wasn't thrilled at that. The only other player I've really said that about, not to toot my own horn, but was Campbell. I remember talking about I did not like that contract at all for him. Keisean Nixon, I'm not a huge fan of the contract. I think he's going to get passed up by midseason, and I think we're going to see, even if it's not Bullard, I don't know if Carrington Valentine or, I know Jaw doesn't like to play in the slot or something, but I feel like if Keisean keeps getting burnt, the amount he gets burned, we're going to have to get him off the field because he'll just be targeted.
How do you guys feel about Eric Stokes in the slot? Because this is something that I've thought of. You have fast slot receivers that you're facing. I think Stokes is the guy you could put on some of those guys.
I think he's too lengthy for that kind of position. I don't think he's bulky enough. That's why I would rather have Jaw, but I don't think we don't want to put Jaw in there. And that's why I do lean towards someone like, I don't know if Carrington Valentine could do it, but that's why I thought King was starting to play in the slot some. Maybe he'll come back at the practice squad, but I don't know if Valentine could do it, but I just don't think that Keisean's the answer there. I think he's gonna. What was the percentage I gave you guys? 80% completion against, or something like that, or 86% completion against last year. It was something absolutely disgusting. We can't get. That's not nearly good enough.
Yeah, something that could be scheme though.
Yeah, he was. I remember when we first discussed him signing his 3 for $18 million deal. And I was looking at his numbers compared to other slot corners. The Colts paid a slot corner like $10 million a year. So like Nixon isn't bad. And then obviously the conversation that he's coming in the comments as well is the kickoff rule. And that's a factor. But right now we're talking strictly defense. I think he's serviceable as a slot corner. Like if you're talking about who you're going to have on the field, I think you're perfectly fine by having Valentine, Stokes, and Jaire on the field at the same time in the corners, and whoever ends up in the slot ends up in the slot. You're talking in the NFL, how many times opposing offenses will put guys who are normally not quote unquote slot receivers in the slot just to create mismatches.
Yeah.
So being able to adjust to things like that, I think, is something that's potentially beneficial.
It was 80.7% completion percent against is what it ended up being.
That's pretty high, yeah.
So if we're getting into a point where, do you think that Evan Williams can play the secondary safety position better than Keisean Nixon can play the slot? Because if the answer is yes to that question, then you put Javon Bullard in the slot and you put Evan Williams at safety.
I can see it. I could see it.
Okay. So we can move on. You guys ready to move on to safeties?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here we go. Starting with Xavier McKinney. Now I have the little asterisk on there because I made this as a bold prediction last week, would be Xavier McKinney being an all-pro. Now I am the closest on our consensus numbers of 92 tackles, 12 passes defensed, 5 interceptions, 29 receptions allowed on 60 targets, and only 1 touchdown allowed. Now, this is like I said before, if the highest person on our stats are the closest on the consensus is true, that's where we get into some really exciting conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And Xavier McKinney, if he puts up numbers like this, I think he's got capability to be an all-pro safety. So Jake has him facing 80 targets and allowing only 15 receptions.
Yep. Lots of overthrows, baby. I also have him way lower on the tackles because I don't think he's going to be near the line of scrimmage a lot. Obviously, you heard my linebacker stats, so I think the linebackers are going to be doing some tackling this year, and I don't think that they're going to let Xavier McKinney have to clean them up, although he is a very good tackler, as Tyler went over when we discussed him being signed. I really strictly think that he's going to turn into the best center fielder in the NFL this year, and I'm going to love every moment of it.
Yeah, you also have him with 19 pass deflections.
Yeah, throw that thing over here. I dare you. I mean, if you're locking down one side of the field with Jaire, and you can kind of, foreshadow where the ball is going to go, I think Xavier McKinney's smart enough to kind of take some stuff away.
I think let me throw this out there. If we're talking, a guy who can sit in the back of the defense and just dissect everything, if Quay Walker were to not be wearing the green dot, how would you feel about Xavier McKinney putting it on?
I honestly will. It's hard because you kind of need a linebacker to kind of be that leader. That's like traditional, just like the quarterback is like traditionally the leader of the offense when they're on the field. But I wouldn't say that it's a terrible idea. You definitely couldn't get anybody that's smarter. He's definitely coming in with an optimistic attitude. He's been talking all offseason about loving Hafley, loving the city, loving the team. So, I mean, you have a guy with that much positive energy, I think that'd be a good thing.
All right. And, yeah, Zach said make quarterbacks throw to Xavier or Jaire.
Please.
Not an exciting prospect either way.
Please.
Okay. So we have a couple rookies, and then we are through all 31 stats projected here. But number one, Javon Bullard. We have him consensus for 68 tackles. We were so close. 6 passes defense, 3 interceptions, 28 receptions allowed on 45 targets, and 4 touchdowns allowed. Justin said Xavier will lead us to the ship. I sure hope he does because I would be really excited for this. Now, if we're looking at the numbers for Javon Bullard, Jake is the closest. And again, if you've watched any of our shows during the draft, during the preseason, during the offseason, Jake is extremely excited for Javon Bullard. So if Jake being the closest to our consensus numbers is what Javon Bullard is, that means good things for the Packers.
Yeah, it does. I like that. Yeah, it does.
Now, I have him lowest at 53 tackles. Simon has him at 68, Bryant at 75, and Jake at 77. I also have him facing more receptions and targets because I do think, like Brian mentioned with Keisean Nixon, that Javon Bullard is going to play a lot of slot corner. So I think it's potential here. Now, I'm not going to say this on everybody, but I think we are looking at, and I think Brian Gutekunst's draft kind of falls into line with this. I think we are looking at potentially a positionless secondary where you have secondary players and not just corners and safeties, but you have guys that can do a little bit of both. I think we're starting to see that with this year's safeties, with those guys being able to play some slot. So I do think it's possible that they run some single high safety, but you also can put a safety in the cornerback spot and then drop him back if you want to. I think that's the versatility that Jeff Hafley wants in the defense, and I'm actually really excited to see how that plays out during the season. So Justin said I think they will target Bullard a lot in the first few games of the season, so maybe 50 plus. I have him at 54. Jake had him at 52. Bryant at 40. Simon only had him at 33.
Oh, wow, Simon. We're not friends no more.
It could be that. It could be that because we do think at first it's going to be rotation. So Javon might not be on the field. He might be splitting time with Williams. I think at this time we're projecting AJJ to be on the team as well. So that probably feeds into it.
Yeah. And we did originally project Anthony Johnson Jr. I just didn't include him because he was released today.
So I will say I want to touch on this because Scott said he's a pretty good cover guy. Zach said Javon is a good open field tackler. Will he get more tackles on receivers or running backs and tight ends? So one thing that I am jealous of Tyler is he got to go to the Senior Bowl. But this year, I don't have to be jealous because I'm going. Tyler and I are going to be there. We're going to be there. We're going to cover it. We're going to make some videos. So it's going to be awesome. But at the Senior Bowl, Javon Bullard was talked about as the best man coverage safety in the entire Senior Bowl. He was covering tight ends and absolutely blanketing them. So I do think that he could be a guy that covers a lot of tight ends, a lot of running backs. I would love to be able to put him on wide receiver, but I don't want to throw too much at him in his first year. I do think that he has the ability, but having a safety that could take away a tight end, oh my goodness, dude, my prayers have been answered.
Yeah, we got with between Javon Bullard and Edgerrin Cooper, we got to what some consensus number one players that people had him on their board. So we could have some rookies that make some serious plays.
You could throw Marshawn Lloyd in there as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Last one, number 31 of 31, Evan Williams. we have him consensus 51 tackles, 5 passes defensed, 2 interceptions, 23 receptions allowed on 36 targets, and 2 touchdowns. Bryant, credit to you. You were very close on your numbers for his consensus. Overall, looking at our numbers, nothing super crazy jumps out to me. Simon has him facing only 20 targets. Jake has him all the way up at 48. So, Jake, you think he's getting targeted downfield or somewhere else?
Yeah, I when I tried to split up the targets between Bullard and Evan Williams, I was really trying to look at them splitting time, and I think teams are going to pass more and more in the NFL. And I think 48 and 52, I took 100 and I split it as closely as I could for playing time, and I just had a little bit more playing time for Bullard because I think he's a little bit better at this point.
Alrighty. Well, if you stuck with us through all 31 players here, we appreciate it. An hour and a half worth of stat projections. We are going to share these graphics over the next week and a half leading up to game day so we can get more discussion going on these. But I want to say thank you to Simon, Jake, Bryant, and yes, myself, for going through these, because I do think with the 4 of us, we get 4 different perspectives on all of these players. And then what I really appreciate about it is being able to see them all next to each other. And I think it generates some really good conversation with some of the standout numbers that aren't quite as similar as the other 3 have. And I think that generates some really good conversation, as well as those of you in the comments asking us questions on the players that we're talking about. And just going to toot my own horn really quick. Having them up on the screen, I think, makes them easier to make tangible and be able to see them while we're talking about them. But
100%.
Again, thank you to everybody who stuck with us the whole time, part of the time, added comments, just watched. We appreciate it all. And thank you guys for projecting these with us.
Also,
next show we'll be talking about a regular season game.
Yes, 2 things. 1, everybody in the comments right now, you are ordered to be there on Tuesday. It is my birthday, and I could say that. So you will be there on Tuesday, and we will have a great time. Also, Tyler, you did a freaking kick-ass job, dude. These graphics look absolutely amazing. Took a lot of hard work for you to get everybody's stats and put them together. So thank you to you. You did awesome. Everybody in the comments, you will be there next Tuesday, and you'll be there tomorrow. We have our first Badgers season primer, or second half of that. We have an episode on Friday on our Patreon. You can come join us for that. It's gonna be a great time. Come check out our boy Mike. He's the best, honestly. And we got some Brewers to talk about, which don't know what the score is right now, but I'm going to check it out as soon as I get off here. But see you tomorrow. We'll see you next Tuesday, and we'll see you on Friday, back-to-back weeks. Other than that, go Pack, go.
Go Pack, go.
All right. We'll see you guys next Tuesday. And, Jake, I will see you tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.